Hey everyone. So I was just talking to my brother on the phone. He's in Germany. I'm here in Australia. And we got to talking about advertising. We have pretty similar views on a lot of those issues. So we were basically just going on for quite a while about how much we both dislike advertising and think it really shouldn't exist. At least in the form that it does today. I am opposed to almost all advertising as it exists today. I really am. I think that it should be gotten rid of. Because it's propaganda. It's propaganda of a blatant kind. And not to say necessarily that, we should ban all propaganda. Actually, we shouldn't, because whenever you try to convince anyone of something, and you're saying, this is a great, let's go have a picnic. It's a beautiful day out and blah 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 and all of these great things. You're not going to mention the ants or the fact that you're going to have to spend 2 hours preparing the picnic. You're only going to emphasize the good points. In a way, that's propaganda. And obviously, when you try to convince someone of anything to do, it's usually a form of propaganda because people talk about the good things, not the bad things. Maybe it would be nice if people just acknowledged the totality of the advantages and disadvantages, but I don't really think we can legislate for that. But the problem I have with propaganda is that it's unidirectional and it's monopolized, or maybe not monopolized, but what's that term? Monopolized? That thing where there are very few entities controlling it. And that's my problem with it. If you look at advertising, it's the big corporations that can buy that kind of airtime. But there's obviously also other forms of propaganda, which is just everything that you read in newspapers, everything the media throws at you, and also the portrayal of society and culture as you see it on mainstream TV. And all of that is also very much driven by humongous corporations. And I think that's bad. I think that the net impact it has on people is to make them less happy, because it produces all of these kind of insatiable desires which make the world go around. Because it's not really money that makes the world go around. If people were ever satisfied, then obviously they'd be like, "Nyeh, money." No, it's producing those desires which need people to get more and more that makes the world go around. And I'm not saying that to a certain part that isn't a drive that humans have anyways. I am saying that it's one that is very much fed and bloated out of all proportion by people in whose interest it is to be able to control people in such a way. And I mean, to me, that's kind of the story of the last, I don't know, 70, 100 years. Because for a long time before that, we were fighting mainly, I guess, against physical force. People were told to be afraid of foreign countries that might invade them. Ooh, the Muslim hordes. Ooh, the Christian crusaders. Ooh, this or that king is going to conquer our country. The Romans are coming, or the Carthaginians, and they're going to rape and plunder and pillage everyone. And if it wasn't a different country, then it was your own. Oh, well, we want more rights, but we're not going to get them, because if we go on the streets, the government's going to send people, they're going to bash us, they're going to shoot some of us, and that's going to be the end of that. And nowadays, I think to some extent, obviously you can still point out all of the lots of ways in which governments and police forces do lots of dodgy things to various forms of protest. But I think to a large extent, that threat of violence has been taken away. And also, I mean, in the end, all it really would take is for us to vote one way or another, kind of continuously, and we could actually make real change. So, to me, that that need for and threat of violence has very much dissipated during the last 100 years. But the thing is, that was the main effort. That was what everyone was aiming at. Everyone thought that once we get a society where we have eliminated or reduced the threat of violent reaction to citizens' action, we'd be finished and we would have won the game and everything would be great and gravy. But that seems to not have worked, because despite the fact that, in my opinion at least, we are at a state where we're significantly removed from the dangers that people would have faced doing political activism or making fun of people in power or running by themselves for a high office. Even though we've come far from that, still not that much is happening, and still we often take steps back rather than steps forward. And that's, I think, because we've focused naturally enough, because that's what the primary kind of delivery method of power was. We focused on physical violence. But people haven't really, it seems to me, woken up entirely to the mental, to the psychological, to the propagandist violence that is equally as powerful. Because the thing is, it's like freedom is about making choices. So if you want to make a choice and someone says, if you make that choice I shoot you, that's pretty obviously violence and coercion. But if you're going to make a choice and someone takes away your information until you can't make that choice properly, until the choice that you end up making is not the choice that's best for you, then that's also a form of violence, because you're not really making that choice freely. And to me, that's where we're at today. We're in a society where we're constantly, the information that we're being provided is heavily filtered and heavily produced by the people with interest in having us behave one way or another. They're not interested in providing us this fair kind of information that would let us make free choices. And so in a way, we're still very much trapped in a kind of we're still repressed. And the sad thing about it is we're repressed, but in a much less visible way. At least if you look at it from that kind of old school way of looking at it, and you look for the guns and you don't really see them. I mean, yes, you can point out the police at a protest, but it's not as effective as when before you could really point to kind of everyday instances of that kind of force being projected. But in my eyes, at least, the violence on the human mind, the violence on the many, is still very much visible if you look for it. It's clearly visible. It's in everything. And I mean, I think that's what the whole campaign finance reform is something that's pointing that out, that is a form of violence and coercion in itself, this distortion of the political process. But it's not just the political process. It's all throughout our culture. It's really gotten our culture in a stranglehold, and it's really moving the culture and thereby society in the direction that it wants it to move. And I think I think it's one of those crazy things, and I think it's one of those things that might actually get us to moving forward or making some progress with the whole thing, is if we acknowledge that more. And I made a video a while back, a response to how the world works, in which I was basically saying similar things, focusing on how I thought advertising was bad. And the most common response I got was, well, advertising only works on suckers. If you're stupid enough to get taken by advertising, it's your own fault. And I think that's that's an attitude that's shared by many people, and I think that's a big part of the problem. Because advertising isn't just for suckers. If it were that easy, if it were some tiny stupid minority that got taken, then advertisers wouldn't be spending that kind of money on these things. Then PR companies wouldn't be hired for everything. Then people wouldn't be worrying about exactly how to modify and phrase that one single word. It's because all of these tricks work. They're well rooted. And we should be far more aware. And I think that kind of self-awareness of, yeah, I'm definitely getting suckered in right now, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, that is a part of it. I'm not saying that somehow I've seen through the Matrix and now I understand the world. No, the realization I come to why I'm so frustrated by it is because I see myself getting taken in little ways and big ways all of the time. I don't feel like I'm really considering my life from this kind of neutral perspective, and I feel myself kind of pushed by all of these forces, and I'm not talking like some, just these currents that I don't really want to be pushed by, but that's where the culture is pushing, and that's where, in my eyes, the culture is pushing, because that's in the interest of certain people for it to push that way. And I think there should just be a much bigger drive. Campaign finance reform is a great start, but media ownership, who owns how much? How much power does Fox News have by piping their propaganda into millions of living rooms? And who owns those broadcasting companies? And how about standard normal citizens that have, whether they be right-wing or left, how can we get access to mainstream media, mainstream airtime? Because yeah, we can do YouTube or whatever, but no, it's unreasonable to expect the things that are in people's faces, television, the advertising on the street, and so on and so forth. It's unreasonable to expect people to look past that and to flock to something that's much less accessible and much more kind of, much more, I guess, insider. No, I think we need to look at the things that are in plain view every day, and we need to say, because they're in plain view, because they are these things that we consume even if we don't want to consume, or if we don't have enough time to spend on looking for something different, that's why we need to try to make sure that those are basically being run in the interest of the people, not in the interest of gigantic corporations or powerful people who then influence us to believe that this is all in our own good and that the market is deciding everything and that that's just what the people want. Those are my thoughts on it anyways. Let me know what you think. I'll see you guys all later at some point. Probably not, unless you make videos, in which case I will see you, but you won't be seeing me, but I guess that's okay. Anyways.